Take a moment and think about this. There are places in the world where $300 a month is enough to rent a decent apartment, not a temporary room, not a cramped corner, but a real living space with natural light, hot water, and a stable internet connection that allows you to live normally. In those places, eating out costs around $2. Not fast food meant just to get by, but a hot meal cooked fresh, the kind locals eat every day as a natural part of life. It sounds hard to believe, doesn't it? Because in many developed countries, $300 barely covers a few small bills, and $2 can't even buy a cup of coffee. That's why the first reaction for most people is skepticism, wondering what the catch is or what kind of hidden price must be paid. But the truth is, not every society is built on constant pressure and endless competition. Not every place forces you to prove your worth every single day just to exist. In some parts of the world, life is designed to be lighter, slower, and far less judgmental. In those places, age doesn't make you invisible. It's seen as a sign of calmness, lived experience, and stability, qualities many people still value. You're not treated as someone past your time, but as someone reliable. This video isn't promising miracles, and it isn't selling easy dreams. It simply shows 5 countries where the cost of living is lower than you might expect, where life moves at a slower pace, and where people don't rush to judge you by your age or your bank balance. And if you've ever felt like you're trying too hard just to stay in the same place, or that the world around you no longer has room for you, then maybe the problem isn't you at all. Maybe you're just standing in the wrong place. 5. Indonesia. When people talk about Indonesia, the conversation almost always stops at one word: Bali. Sunbeds, beach clubs, short stays, and a version of life designed almost entirely for outsiders. But Indonesia is not Bali. And the Indonesia that quietly works for long-term living exists far away from that image. Look inland, and the country feels different almost immediately. On the island of Java, life moves with structure and routine rather than spectacle. In cities like Yogyakarta, days revolve around work, family meals, neighborhood conversations, and traditions that haven't been simplified for visitors. Even in places like Lombok, which sits close to Bali geographically, the atmosphere is quieter, less performative, and far more grounded in everyday reality. These are not places built for escape. They're places built for staying. The cost of living reflects that. For many foreigners coming from high-cost countries, the numbers feel almost out of place in the modern world. A clean, modern apartment often rents for $250 to $400 a month, depending on the city and how central you choose to live. This isn't luxury living, but it's comfortable, functional, and stable. Eating out isn't something you plan for, it's something you do naturally. Local meals typically cost between $1.50 and $3, and transportation rarely exceeds $1 per trip, whether you're using shared rides, buses, or scooters. Life doesn't require constant financial calculation here. Healthcare is another area that surprises people who only know Indonesia from headlines. In major cities, private clinics are professional, well-staffed, and affordable. Routine care is easy to access, and doctors are accustomed to treating foreigners. Many long-term expats carry international health insurance, not because the local system is inadequate, but because it offers peace of mind for larger procedures. Day-to-day medical needs don't come with the same financial fear that exists elsewhere. Staying in Indonesia long-term requires patience rather than wealth. Most foreigners rely on KITAS permits or renewable long-stay visas. The process is rarely fast, and it can feel confusing at first. Paperwork takes time, offices move slowly, and rules are sometimes interpreted differently depending on where you are. But once you understand how the system works and accept that efficiency isn't the goal, it becomes manageable. Indonesia rewards calm persistence, not urgency. What truly defines life here, however, goes beyond cost or logistics. Indonesian society places deep importance on age responsibility and one's role within the family. Older men are not pushed aside or quietly dismissed. They're often viewed as steadier, more reliable, and better equipped to carry responsibility. Experience is something that earns respect, not something that needs to be defended. Relationships develop within that framework. They tend to move slowly, shaped by consistency rather than intensity. Showing up matters more than standing out. Keeping your word carries weight. For men who feel overlooked in fast-paced, youth-driven cultures, Indonesia can feel unexpectedly grounding. Here, maturity isn't a disadvantage. It's part of what makes someone trustworthy. Daily life reinforces that feeling. Neighbors notice if you disappear for a few days. Shop owners remember you. Conversations aren't rushed. You're not constantly asked what you do or how much you earn. Instead, people care about whether you behave respectfully, whether you contribute, and whether you understand your place within the social fabric. That said, Indonesia is not effortless. Bureaucracy can test your patience, and religious values shape public life in visible ways. Social expectations exist, and they matter. For some, this structure feels limiting. For others, it provides clarity and stability in a world that often feels unanchored. Indonesia is not a country that sells itself loudly. It doesn't promise reinvention or instant belonging. What it offers instead is something quieter. A place where life slows down, where age doesn't work against you, and where stability is still seen as a strength. And for some people, that quiet shift is far more powerful than anything louder could ever be. 4. Georgia. If there is a place that sits between Europe and Asia, yet doesn't fully belong to either, it's Georgia. A country in the Caucasus region with thousands of years of history, and yet one that is rarely mentioned in conversations about relocation or retirement. And it's precisely this quiet presence that makes Georgia so distinctive. Georgia doesn't promote itself loudly. There are no aggressive campaigns aimed at foreigners, no glossy promises, no exaggerated narratives. But for those who arrive, the first impression is often a natural sense of openness. Foreigners aren't treated as curiosities, nor are they viewed with suspicion. This is a society shaped by centuries of cultural crossroads, accustomed to coexistence with difference. The cost of living reflects that same grounded reality. In Tbilisi and other major cities, a clean, comfortable apartment typically rents for $300 to $500 a month. Eating out is not a luxury. Local meals usually cost $3 to $5, feeling simple and rooted in Caucasian culinary traditions. Life here doesn't force you to optimize every expense, but it also doesn't encourage excess. Healthcare, particularly private healthcare, is another quiet advantage. Georgia's private medical sector offers solid quality at costs far lower than those found in Western Europe. Medical care doesn't come with prolonged financial anxiety, and for many foreigners, this creates a sense of stability as health naturally becomes a greater concern with age. When it comes to residency, Georgia stands out as one of the most flexible countries in the region. Citizens of many nations can stay for up to 1 year without a visa, a rarity in Europe. For those who choose to remain longer, long-term residency options are relatively clear and adaptable. The process isn't effortless, but it is transparent and predictable, something many people appreciate after navigating more rigid systems elsewhere. Socially, Georgia is traditional without being rigid. Women here often value calmness, stability, and a family-oriented mindset in men. Relationships are not rushed or driven by dating apps and algorithms. Dating moves slowly, shaped by time, presence, and reliability. In this context, age is not a disadvantage. It's often seen as a sign of maturity. Everyday life reinforces these values. The pace is measured. Social connections aren't constantly interrupted by packed schedules. Family remains central. People tend to evaluate others not by appearances or accomplishments, but by behavior over time. Of course, Georgia involves trade-offs. Winters can be cold and long, especially for those used to warmer climates. The Georgian language is difficult to learn, and English is not as widely spoken as in Western Europe. Integration requires patience and a willingness to remain a learner. But these challenges are also part of Georgia's character. This isn't a place built for absolute convenience. It's a place for those who value clarity, stability, and a rhythm of life where age isn't treated as a liability. Georgia doesn't try to impress you. It simply gives you space to live, and for many, that's more than enough. 3. Romania. Romania is a country that resists easy labels. Geographically and legally, it sits in Eastern Europe and is part of the European Union. But in everyday life, it still preserves many traditional rhythms that Western Europe left behind long ago. The modern and the old exist side by side, not in conflict, but in balance. In cities like Bucharest, Cluj-Napoca, or Brașov, quiet historic neighborhoods sit just minutes away from modern business districts. Life here isn't rushed yet. It isn't stagnant either. Romania feels like a middle ground, developed enough to be comfortable, but not optimized to the point of feeling impersonal. That balance is reflected in the cost of living. Renting a modest, well-maintained apartment typically costs $300 to $500 per month, depending on the city and location. Total monthly living expenses, including food, transportation, and basic utilities, usually fall between $600 and $800. For many, this allows a stable, comfortable lifestyle without constant financial pressure. Romania's private healthcare system is one of its quieter strengths. Private hospitals offer solid medical standards, experienced doctors, and costs that are significantly lower than those in Western Europe. Accessing healthcare doesn't come with long-term financial anxiety, which becomes increasingly important as health takes on greater significance with age. In terms of residency, Romania provides clear pathways for people with stable, documented income. The process isn't always fast, but it follows a logical structure. For those who choose to stay, long-term residency in an EU country brings meaningful benefits. Freedom of movement within the bloc, access to European legal and healthcare systems, and long-term institutional stability. Socially, Romania tends to value maturity. Age is commonly associated with experience and reliability rather than something to hide or compensate for. Women here are generally less absorbed by the modern dating game, where relationships are reduced to apps, profiles, and quick judgments. Connections tend to develop slowly, shaped by time, presence, and a sense of long-term security. Family continues to play an important role in social life. Stability, responsibility, and calmness are often valued more than flash or self-promotion. For those exhausted by fast-paced dating cultures and constant social pressure, Romania can feel noticeably more breathable. Of course, Romania has its trade-offs. Bureaucracy can be slow, and administrative processes require patience. Paperwork isn't always smooth, and for those seeking something dramatically exotic, Romania may feel too familiar. But that ordinariness is also its strength. Romania doesn't try to impress. It simply offers a place where you can live steadily at a reasonable cost in a society where age is treated as a sign of maturity, not a disadvantage. And for many people, that balance is becoming increasingly rare. 2. Ecuador. Ecuador is one of those South American countries that surprises people not because it's loud or dramatic, but because it's consistently peaceful. This isn't a place of constant headlines or high-pressure living. Instead, Ecuador quietly attracts a very specific group: retirees and long-term expats looking for stability rather than excitement. In cities like Cuenca Loja and the temperate highland regions, life moves at a different rhythm. There's no rush, no constant urgency. Daily life feels arranged in a way that leaves room for people, for family, and for small routines that give structure to everyday living. It's a side of South America many don't expect. The cost of living reflects that calm. Renting a comfortable apartment typically costs $300 to $500 per month, depending on location and amenities. Total monthly expenses, including food, transportation, utilities, and basic needs, usually fall between $800 and $1,000. For retirees or those with steady income, this allows a comfortable lifestyle without the constant pressure of budgeting every decision. Healthcare is one of Ecuador's strongest advantages. The country is well known for medical tourism, offering private hospitals and clinics with solid standards at relatively low costs. Private health insurance is affordable, giving foreigners access to quality care without the fear of overwhelming medical bills. For those who prioritize healthcare, this is a very practical benefit. Residency is another area where Ecuador stands out. The country offers one of the clearest retirement visa programs in the region. Income requirements are modest, the process is transparent, and the rules are easy to understand. For people planning to stay long-term, this removes a major source of uncertainty. Socially, Ecuador is deeply family-centered. Relationships are built around connection, responsibility, and long-term commitment. Older men are often seen as mature, dependable, and well-suited to stable family roles. These values aren't loudly advertised, but they're evident in everyday interactions. Dating here isn't driven by apps or fast-moving trends. Everything unfolds slowly, sometimes very slowly. For some, that pace can feel frustrating. But for others who are worn down by speed and pressure elsewhere, it's exactly what makes Ecuador appealing. Of course, there are trade-offs. Spanish is almost essential if you want to truly integrate into local life. And the slower pace isn't just cultural, it's practical. Things take time, whether it's paperwork or relationships. But for those willing to adjust, Ecuador offers something increasingly rare, a place where life doesn't feel like a race, where you don't have to constantly prove your worth. You simply show up, and for many people, that's enough. 1. Laos. If there is one place on this list where time seems to slow down more than anywhere else, it's Laos. A quiet country in Southeast Asia, unhurried, non-competitive, and largely untouched by the constant race the rest of the world seems trapped in. Laos doesn't try to become a destination. It simply exists. And for some people, that alone feels like relief. Life here moves at a very different rhythm. No one is rushing to prove anything. No one asks what you do, how much you earn, or what you've achieved. Days unfold slowly, sometimes so slowly that newcomers feel disoriented at first. But for those exhausted by constant pressure, that pace feels less like a drawback and more like a long-needed exhale. The cost of living reflects that simplicity. Renting a basic clean apartment typically falls between $200 and $400 per month. Eating out isn't a financial decision, it's just part of daily life. Local meals usually cost $1 to $2, warm, filling, and closely tied to everyday routines. Here, you don't need much to live adequately. Healthcare in Laos is basic. Routine medical needs can be handled locally, but for major procedures, most expats travel to Thailand, where medical facilities are more advanced and only a few hours away. This isn't hidden or denied. It's simply part of the reality of living in Laos, accepted openly and without pretense. From a residency perspective, Laos keeps things relatively low pressure. Visa extensions are generally manageable, and the legal environment doesn't feel adversarial toward long-term foreigners. The system isn't built to rush you or intimidate you, and for many people that simplicity brings a rare sense of ease. What truly sets Laos apart is its social culture. Age is respected naturally. Your past isn't scrutinized. People don't rush to label or judge you. Relationships tend to form around kindness, consistency, and a sense of stability rather than status or achievement. For those who have felt weighed down by judgment elsewhere, Laos offers a gentler social environment. Of course, Laos isn't for everyone. Infrastructure is limited. Modern conveniences are few. If you depend on high-speed services, constant options, and maximum comfort, this may not be the right place. But it's precisely these limitations that keep Laos from being pulled into the same competitive cycle as everywhere else. Laos doesn't promise a perfect life. It offers something quieter, a different option. A place where you don't have to run, don't have to prove yourself, and don't have to become anything other than who you already are. And for some people, that isn't just a place to live. It's a place to stop. Perhaps the most important thing all the places we've explored have in common isn't the lower cost of living, or the climate, or the scenery. It's something harder to put into words. It's the feeling that age is no longer treated as a flaw. No one looks at you as if you've slowed down too early. No one asks you to explain why you're no longer running at full speed. In those places, living slowly isn't a failure. It's normal. It's the natural rhythm of life. People have more time for each other, for shared meals, for conversations without an agenda. And most importantly, there's less judgment, fewer labels, less pressure to become someone else just to be accepted. This video isn't telling you to leave where you are, and it's not promising that life somewhere else will be easier. It's simply offering a possibility that there are places in the world where you're seen differently, where your value doesn't decline with time. And maybe the most important question isn't how old you are, it's this. If age stopped working against you, where would you choose to live? If this video made you pause and reflect, tap like to support the channel. And subscribe if you want more journeys like this, slow, honest, and unfiltered. And I'd really like to hear from you. Which country surprised you the most? Leave a comment. This conversation doesn't have to end just yet.